I'd say 2024 was the hardest year I've ever had. You know, life is sent to test us as well. And
almost the entire royal family stepped out for the funeral of the Duchess of Kent, including Prince Andrew.
You know, this was such an awkward encounter. Prince Andrew is very much in exile. He's not really welcome at public events.
A single glance can say more than 1,000 words. And at a royal funeral, meant to honor the dead, one stare cut through the silence like a blade. Prince Andrew locked eyes on Catherine, Princess of Wales, with a look so cold it made the air freeze. But what came after that moment? What did Prince William do that left everyone in absolute shock? The answer reveals a rift in the royal family that can never be repaired. Stay with us to uncover the shocking truth behind this story. The royal rift that started it all. To truly grasp what happened that day, we need to go back to where it all began. This wasn't just about one uncomfortable moment at a funeral. This was the result of years of growing anger, resentment, and disrespect. Royal sources revealed something that would change everything between Prince William and his uncle forever. Prince Andrew had made a comment about Catherine that crossed every line imaginable. According to royal biographer Andrew Looney, who documented these events in his work on the House of York, Andrew made cruel remarks about the Princess of Wales shortly after Queen Elizabeth II passed away. The timing couldn't have been worse. The family was supposed to stand united during their grief. Instead, Andrew chose that moment to attack Catherine with words dripping in jealousy. This wasn't just gossip or hearsay. Multiple insiders confirmed that Andrew had issues with Catherine's growing influence in the monarchy. Think about it. Catherine had transformed from a middle-class girl into one of the most beloved figures in the royal family. Her grace under pressure, her dedication to duty, and her genuine warmth with the public made her shine.
Getting tips from Her Majesty, keeping it real with her kids, and stepping into the spotlight.
While other royals stumbled through scandals, Catherine remained steady. She became the face of a modern monarchy that people could actually respect. And that success ate away at Prince Andrew. Looney's research suggested that Andrew mocked Catherine behind closed doors. He resented how she had risen to prominence while his own reputation crumbled. For William, hearing that his uncle spoke badly about his wife was the final breaking point. Catherine wasn't just his partner. She was the woman who would one day stand beside him as queen consort. Any insult toward her was an insult to William himself and to the future of the crown. From that moment forward, William made a decision. He would keep Andrew at arm's length. Whatever relationship they once had was finished. But this wasn't just about one comment. Andrew's entire history of poor choices had been building toward this moment. His connection to convicted criminal Jeffrey Epstein had already destroyed his public image. That disastrous interview where he tried to explain himself only made things worse. His excuses sounded hollow. His lack of remorse shocked viewers around the world. In early 2022, Queen Elizabeth took action. She stripped Andrew of his military honors and royal titles. He could no longer use his status in any official way. For someone who had built his entire identity around rank and privilege, this was devastating. Yet Andrew still believed he could make a comeback. He thought time would heal the damage. He was wrong. William saw Andrew as a man who refused to take responsibility for his actions. While William worked hard to build trust with the public, Andrew's name remained linked to scandal. The comment about Catherine confirmed what William already suspected. His uncle had no respect for the people working to restore the monarchy's reputation. William decided right then that Andrew would never return to royal duties as long as he had any say in the matter. When William becomes king, Andrew will remain on the outside looking in. The king caught between brother and duty. King Charles faces an impossible situation. He loves his brother. They grew up together, shared childhood memories, and have a bond that goes back decades. Charles has quietly helped Andrew during his darkest moments. When Andrew needed money to settle his legal case in America, Charles provided financial support. That act showed that despite everything, the brotherly connection still existed. But Charles also wears the crown. As king, he cannot ignore what Andrew represents to the British people. The monarchy survives on public trust. When that trust breaks, it takes years to rebuild. Charles knows that allowing Andrew back into royal life would be a disaster. The media would tear them apart. The public would lose even more faith in the institution. Yet Charles struggles with the idea of completely abandoning his brother. This is where Charles and William disagree most strongly. Charles believes in family unity. He lived through the painful divorces and public feuds that nearly destroyed the royal family in the past. He thinks there must be a way to balance loyalty with accountability. Maybe Andrew could have some private role, something that keeps him connected without putting him in the spotlight. Charles wants to believe redemption is possible. William sees it differently. For him, there is no middle ground. Andrew lost his chance when he chose to associate with criminals. He lost it again when he showed no real remorse. And he lost it permanently when he spoke cruelly about Catherine. William believes the monarchy must move forward without Andrew. Any attempt to bring him back would be a step backward. The institution cannot afford to look weak or forgiving towards someone who damaged its reputation so severely. Reports suggest that William and Charles have had heated conversations about this issue. William has made his position crystal clear. He will not attend events where Andrew is given any honor or recognition. He will not stand beside his uncle for photo opportunities. He will not pretend everything is fine when it clearly isn't. This firm stance has created tension between father and son, but William refuses to back down. The differences between their approaches became visible in small but meaningful ways. In late 2024, Catherine organized a Christmas carol service focused on unity.
This year, we've invited hundreds of inspiring individuals to the service.
And kindness. The guest list was carefully chosen to reflect those values. Prince Andrew and his former wife Sarah Ferguson were not invited. Some claimed it was just about space limitations, but everyone understood the real message. William and Catherine did not want Andrew at an event celebrating goodness and community. Then came Easter, 2025. Andrew attended a church service at Windsor.
Easter Sunday, for the royals, a time of faith and family, despite Prince Andrew stepping back from official duties.
Arriving in full view of photographers. But William and Catherine were nowhere to be seen. Some said it was just scheduling. Others recognized it as a deliberate choice. William was refusing to be photographed standing near his uncle. Each small decision added up to a larger statement about where Andrew stood in the family structure. Charles tries his best to manage both sides. He wants to support his son's vision for the future while not completely cutting ties with his brother. It's a balancing act that gets harder every day. Charles knows that eventually, William will be king. When that happens, the decisions will be entirely in William's hands. And based on everything that's happened, Andrew's chances of ever returning to royal life are essentially zero. The funeral that changed everything. September 16th, 2025, dawned quietly in London. The sky was gray, matching the somber mood of the day. The Duchess of Kent had passed away.
The Duchess of Kent has died. That news has been released there from the royal family.
And her funeral was scheduled at Westminster Cathedral. The Duchess had lived a remarkable life dedicated to service, humility, and faith. She taught music to children in poor neighborhoods. She gave up her royal title to live more simply. She never sought attention or created scandal. Her funeral was meant to honor that legacy of quiet dignity. Inside the cathedral, everything was arranged with care. Dark flowers lined the aisles, candles flickered softly. The organ played gentle music that echoed through the ancient stone walls. Family members arrived in dark clothing, their faces showing the weight of loss. King Charles sat at the front, his expression solemn. Queen Camilla was absent due to illness, so Princess Anne sat nearby, representing the family with her usual composure. Then William and Catherine arrived. They walked slowly, greeting people with quiet respect. Catherine wore a simple black coat dress and a hat with a short veil. Her presence commanded attention without any effort. William guided her gently, his hand occasionally at her back. They moved together as a unit, calm and dignified. The room fell into deeper silence as they took their seats. But the arrival that surprised everyone was Prince Andrew with Sarah Ferguson beside him. Nobody expected them. Andrew had stepped away from public life years ago after his scandals destroyed his reputation. His appearance at such a significant royal event raised eyebrows immediately, yet the service began as planned. Prayers were read, hymns were sung. The choir performed beautifully. The Duchess's favorite hymn filled the cathedral with its ancient melody. Everything seemed respectful at first, but then people began to notice something disturbing. While most guests kept their heads bowed in prayer and reflection, Andrew seemed distracted. His eyes wandered. He glanced around the room, seeming more interested in the people than the ceremony. And then it happened. Multiple witnesses later confirmed that Andrew stared directly at Catherine with an expression that was far from friendly. His gaze was cold. Some even said they saw a faint smirk on his face. This behavior was shocking on multiple levels. First, it disrespected the entire purpose of the funeral. This was a day to honor a woman who had dedicated her life to serving others with humility. Andrew's wandering attention and inappropriate expressions showed a complete lack of respect for the occasion. Second, it was an insult to the monarch and the family. Royal protocol demands dignity at such events. Andrew's conduct broke those unspoken rules. As the service continued, the tension became more obvious. Andrew tried several times to engage with family members nearby. He leaned forward slightly, attempting to make eye contact or whisper something, but every attempt was met with silence. People kept their eyes forward. Nobody responded to his gestures. It was a quiet rejection, but in the formal setting of a royal funeral, it was impossible to miss. Sarah tried to smooth things over, offering small smiles and gentle words to Andrew. But nothing helped. The distance between Andrew and the rest of the family grew more apparent with each passing minute. Even when he reached out to shake hands with a distant cousin, the gesture was politely avoided. The message was clear. Andrew was not welcome in their circle. His eyes kept drifting back to Catherine. He seemed frustrated that his earlier attempts at connection had failed. Perhaps he thought approaching William and Catherine directly would change things. As the final hymn ended and people began to stand for closing prayers, Andrew made his move. He positioned himself near the aisle where William and Catherine were standing. His steps were careful, calculated. Sarah followed closely behind, her expression showing concern. The moment that made history. William stood tall beside his wife, his hands clasped in front of him. His gaze remained fixed straight ahead. Catherine mirrored his composure, her veil partially covering her face, giving her an air of quiet strength. Then Andrew stepped closer. He leaned slightly toward William, clearly intending to say something. But William gave him nothing. Not a glance, not a nod, not even the slightest acknowledgement. The rejection was absolute. William's face remained firm. His eyes never moved in Andrew's direction. Without a single word, he communicated everything that needed to be said. Andrew was not worth his time or attention. Catherine stood steady at William's side, her presence showing complete support for her husband's decision. She didn't turn toward Andrew either. They were united in their response. Andrew shifted his position, edging even closer. He seemed to be hoping for even the smallest reaction, but it never came. William stayed perfectly still. Catherine did the same. The silence between them was more powerful than any argument could have been. People standing nearby felt the tension radiating from that small space. It was rare to witness such open conflict between senior royals, especially at a funeral. As the coffin of the Duchess of Kent was carried down the aisle, the family began their solemn walk behind it. The organ played its final notes. William placed his hand gently on Catherine's back, guiding her forward. They walked together in perfect step, their unity clear to everyone watching. Behind them came Andrew and Sarah. The physical distance between them was small, but the emotional gap was enormous. Cameras captured every second. Royal observers noticed everything. The lack of interaction, the deliberate avoidance, the visible tension. It all told a story that needed no words. The rift between uncle and nephew was now public knowledge. There was no hiding it anymore. William had drawn his line, and he had done it in front of the world. But the story didn't end when the service finished. Most people expected Andrew to quietly return home and stay out of sight. Instead, he did something that shocked everyone even more. Later that same day, photographers spotted him leaving his residence in a Range Rover. This was his first public appearance after the funeral incident. He showed no signs of remorse. No apology was issued. He simply carried on as if nothing had happened. That bold move sent shockwaves through royal circles. It wasn't just the silence at the funeral that upset people. It was the combination of his disrespectful behavior during the service, his refusal to acknowledge any wrongdoing, and his immediate return to public view. To many, it felt like Andrew was deliberately thumbing his nose at the family and the public. He seemed to believe he had done nothing wrong. The contrast between Andrew and the woman being honored that day made his actions even worse. The Duchess of Kent had lived her life with grace and humility. She stepped away from royal titles to teach music to underprivileged children. She converted to Catholicism and faced criticism for it, but stayed true to her beliefs. She founded a charity to help young musicians who couldn't afford instruments or lessons. She never created scandal. She never embarrassed the family. She simply served with quiet dignity until her final days. Andrew had done the opposite at every turn. He clung to privilege even as his reputation collapsed. His connection to a convicted criminal destroyed public trust. His failed attempt to explain himself made things worse. His refusal to show genuine remorse alienated him further. And now, on a day meant to honor a woman who represented the best of royal service, Andrew had shown complete disrespect. William's reaction at the funeral was about more than protecting his wife from a cold stare. It was about defending the values that the Duchess of Kent had represented. It was about drawing a line between those who serve the monarchy with honor and those who damage it through selfish choices. In that moment of silence, William made a statement that will echo through royal history. He stood up for Catherine, he stood up for the Duchess's memory, and he stood up for the future of the crown. The days following the funeral brought more discussion and debate. Royal experts analyzed William's response. Some praised his strength and clarity. Others worried about the public display of family conflict. But most agreed on one thing. William had made his position clear. Andrew would not be welcome back. There would be no second chances. The door was closed permanently. King Charles now faces an even harder path forward. His son has taken a public stand that cannot be reversed. Any attempt to soften the approach toward Andrew would create a direct conflict between the current king and the future king. Charles must decide whether to support William's vision or continue trying to balance family loyalty with royal duty. The choice will define how the monarchy moves forward in the coming years. For Catherine, the moment revealed something important. She is not just William's wife. She is a full partner in his mission to protect and modernize the monarchy. Her quiet strength during the funeral showed that she can handle pressure with grace, and William's fierce protection of her demonstrated how seriously he takes his role as both husband and future king. Together, they present a united front that Andrew cannot break. The funeral of the Duchess of Kent will forever be etched in royal history, not just as a day of mourning, but as the moment that silently revealed the deepest fracture within the House of Windsor. Beneath the somber bells and black veils, a single glance spoke volumes. Prince William's expression was calm, controlled, but icy. A stare that carried the weight of 1,000 children's well-being came first, no matter who felt offended. The consequences of that one painful day were now unfolding, and there was no turning back. silent divides behind royal doors. The tension in the palace was impossible to ignore. Behind polite smiles and formal appearances, something had shifted. There were no public announcements, no press statements, yet the air among the royals had grown heavier. William's quiet decision had been delivered privately, but it carried a weight everyone could feel. Those closest to the family knew that a boundary had been crossed, and now things would not return to how they once were. Camilla, still fuming, made her displeasure known in private circles. She felt her grandson had been unfairly punished, and though she tried to stay composed in public, behind the scenes, she was deeply hurt. Her relationship with William had always been complicated, and now it was colder than ever. She believed William had overreacted. To her, it was just children being children. But William saw it differently. To him, this wasn't about play, it was about respect, dignity, and protection. King Charles found himself in an impossible position. As a father, he understood William's decision. As a husband, he could feel Camilla's pain. But as monarch, he needed to keep the peace. He said little, but his silence carried its own weight. Every glance, every quiet exchange in the corridors of the palace seemed to say more than words could. What was once a united royal family now felt quietly divided. No shouting, no scandal, just an invisible line that had been drawn. One decision had shaken the balance, and no one knew what would happen next. A line, drawn in royal sand. Prince William's message had been delivered firmly, but without noise. Camilla's grandson was to have no place at any royal event involving George or his siblings. There would be no titles in the future, no special invitations, no appearances beside the young heirs. It wasn't a public punishment. It was a private line drawn, one that signaled William's growing authority inside the royal family. His decision wasn't just about protecting George. It was about showing that actions had consequences, even for those close to the queen consort. For years, Camilla's grandson had been treated kindly at events. Though not of royal blood, he had been given access to private moments, extended the courtesy of inclusion, and welcomed as part of the inner family. William had never objected until now. This quiet removal wasn't personal revenge, it was about principle. The royal family operated under a strict, unspoken code of loyalty, respect, and dignity. The moment that code was broken, action had to follow. Camilla was still trying to understand how it had come to this. She remembered a time when William seemed to trust her. But now, everything had changed. She worried about what her grandson might think. Would he grow up resenting the monarchy? Would he carry this exclusion for life? Her frustration turned to fear, not just for him, but for the balance of the royal family itself. William, however, didn't look back. The line had been drawn, and behind it stood his family, shielded, protected, and no longer open to harm. Camilla's quiet fury. Camilla kept a calm face in public, but inside, she was furious. The decision to exclude her grandson felt like a personal attack, one that wounded her pride and threatened the delicate peace she had worked hard to build within the royal family. To many, Camilla had finally earned her place after years of public scrutiny. But now, that sense of belonging was slipping away. Her family had been pushed aside, and she couldn't ignore it. Behind closed doors, Camilla spoke with Charles in hushed, tense conversations. She tried to explain that her grandson didn't mean any real harm, that children often say things without thinking. She reminded him that William himself had once been a playful boy. But Charles, while sympathetic, remained mostly silent. He understood his wife's pain, but he also knew the seriousness behind William's choice. If he challenged it, he'd risk deepening the divide. If he stayed neutral, he risked losing Camilla's trust. The queen consort began to feel isolated. She was used to navigating tension from the public, but facing it from within the palace walls was different. Her influence, once growing steadily, now seemed uncertain. Every glance, every whispered conversation among staff made her feel watched, judged. In private, she confided in a close friend, asking how a single moment had unraveled so much. Her grandson had made a mistake. Yes, but did that mean he should be erased from the family? The silence from others said more than words ever could, and Camilla wasn't ready to forgive. The king caught in the middle king. Charles found himself in the most difficult position of all. As monarch, he was expected to lead with wisdom and neutrality. As a father, he understood William's pain, and as a husband, he couldn't ignore Camilla's quiet suffering. Every path he considered seemed to disappoint someone. He had dealt with political crises, public scandals, and royal family disputes, but this felt different. This wasn't just about titles or protocol, it was about emotions. Deep, personal emotions tearing through the core of his family. Charles had hoped that time would heal the issue, that silence might let the storm pass. But the silence had only made it worse. William had made his decision and wasn't interested in negotiation. Camilla felt humiliated, and her trust in her position was beginning to crack. The staff at Buckingham Palace moved carefully, avoiding involvement, but everyone could feel the chill in the air. The king tried speaking to William privately. He asked him to consider whether the punishment was too harsh, but William stood firm. His son had cried in his arms, confused and hurt. That was all he needed to remember. He reminded his father that being king didn't mean turning away from what's right, especially when it came to family. Charles was heartbroken. He had hoped that the years of division in the royal family were behind them. But now, once again, he saw history repeating itself. This time, though, he was in the center of it, with no clear way to bring peace. A palace full of whispers. Inside the palace, nothing looked out of place: polished floors, royal portraits, and perfectly timed schedules. But beneath the surface, everything had changed. The staff moved a little more carefully. Conversations were shorter, and glances lingered longer than usual. The story of Camilla's grandson and his sudden exclusion from royal events had spread quietly, passed from one corridor to the next in hushed tones. No one dared speak openly, but the tension was impossible to ignore. Those who served the royal family understood the signs. When silence grew this thick, it meant something serious had taken root. People began to guess what had happened behind the scenes. Some whispered that William had gone too far. Others believed he was right to act when his child had been hurt. There were no official explanations, only speculation, concern, and quiet division. Camilla became noticeably more reserved. She avoided long public appearances and stayed closer to her private quarters. Those closest to her said she was deeply hurt, not just by the exclusion of her grandson, but by the fact that almost no one had come to her defense. It felt like a slow withdrawal, like being pushed to the edge of a family she had fought so hard to be part of. William, meanwhile, remained focused on his children. He did not engage in back-and-forth debates. For him, the issue had been addressed. But for everyone else inside those palace walls, the ripple effects had only just begun, and they were growing stronger by the day. Rumors reached the public. At first, the public heard nothing. The royal family had remained silent, keeping the issue tightly sealed behind palace gates. But silence has a way of drawing attention. It didn't take long for curious eyes to notice small changes: Camilla appearing less frequently, William keeping a firmer grip on his children, and one familiar face missing from recent family events. Royal watchers picked up on the patterns, and soon, whispers turned into headlines. Speculation began to surface. Why was Camilla's grandson absent? Why had Prince George appeared so uncomfortable at the last gathering? And most importantly, what was happening behind the scenes that no one was talking about? Though no official statement was released, clues from unnamed sources started filling in the blanks. Reporters hinted at a private dispute involving the younger royals. Social media picked up the story and gave it fuel. Public reactions were split. Some supported William's firm stance, praising him for protecting his children at all costs. Others questioned whether it was right to punish a child so harshly, especially one connected to the Queen consort. Online debates grew heated. The palace offered no answers, which only deepened the public's curiosity. Behind the royal silence, tension continued to build. Every family event was watched more closely. Every gesture was analyzed. And though the full truth hadn't been shared, the damage was becoming visible. What started as a personal incident was now a growing public drama. The royal image, so carefully managed, was starting to feel unstable. Cracks in the royal image. The royal family has always been a symbol of strength, unity, and tradition. But now, behind that carefully polished image, visible cracks were beginning to form. The tension, once hidden behind palace walls, was starting to spill into the public eye. No official statements were issued, but the silence was beginning to speak louder than words. Royal watchers, journalists, and even loyal supporters began to ask uncomfortable questions. Why was there such visible distance between William and Camilla? Why had her grandson suddenly disappeared from view? The palace's public relations team tried to maintain order. Every photo released was carefully selected, every public appearance rehearsed down to the smallest detail. But even the most flawless images couldn't erase the subtle signs of division. William's expressions were more guarded. Camilla smiled less. And King Charles, usually calm and collected, looked increasingly weighed down. These were not wild assumptions. They were visible to anyone paying close attention. In an age where every move is watched and every word analyzed, the palace's strategy of silence was no longer working. The people wanted answers. They wanted to know what had caused this unseen fracture in the heart of the monarchy. And with each passing day, the mystery grew stronger. The once unshakable royal image was now showing signs of vulnerability. It was clear that something had changed, and no matter how much the palace tried to hold things together, the emotional tension between key figures couldn't be hidden forever. The weight on young shoulders. Amidst all the palace tension and silent power struggles, one person felt the weight more than anyone realized: Prince George. He may be young, but he's not unaware. The shift in energy, the whispers behind closed doors, the overprotective glances from his parents, he felt it all. And though no one expected him to fully understand the depth of what had happened, he knew enough to feel different, changed. Since that painful day, George had been more reserved. He laughed a little less, spoke a little softer, and stayed closer to his parents. Kate noticed it first, the way he avoided crowded rooms, how he held her hand longer than usual during public appearances. She didn't push him to talk, but she stayed close. William, too, became more protective. Every step George took was met with watchful eyes. It wasn't just about parenting anymore. It was about shielding him from the emotional aftershocks of betrayal. The young prince, born into a life of spotlight and scrutiny, had experienced something deeply personal hurt, not from the public, but from within his own extended family. That wound, though not visible to the world, was still healing. And as cameras continued to flash and public events moved forward, George quietly carried the burden of that day with him. The royal family often speaks of duty and tradition, but for George, the only thing that mattered now was safety. And to his parents, that meant creating a space where he could grow without fear, even if it meant upsetting the old order. Echoes of the past. For many inside the palace, this wasn't just a modern family dispute, it felt like history repeating itself. Royal watchers who had followed the monarchy for decades couldn't help but draw comparisons. The tension between William and Camilla reminded them of earlier rifts, particularly the emotional wounds left by Princess Diana's strained relationship with the royal institution. Once again, personal pain was clashing with public image, and it was stirring old ghosts. Whispers inside royal circles grew louder. Some recalled how Diana had often spoken about protecting her sons from palace politics. Now it seemed William was doing just that, standing firm, shielding his own children from harm, no matter where that harm came from. The irony wasn't lost on those who remembered Diana's warnings. Her oldest son had grown into a father who was no longer willing to stay silent. Camilla, too, was haunted by the past. She had spent years rebuilding her reputation after public criticism. She had tried to find peace, to blend her family with Charles's world. But the reminder that her family was still seen as outsiders, that one moment could reopen old wounds, left her deeply unsettled. King Charles, carrying his own history of public judgment, now faced a test of his leadership within the walls of his own home. He had hoped the past would stay buried. But with emotions running high and divisions deepening, it was clear that some royal scars never fully heal, they simply wait for the next moment to reopen. Boundaries of blood and title. In the royal world, bloodlines carry power, but they also come with boundaries. Camilla's grandson had always lived in a gray area. He wasn't born into the royal lineage, but through Camilla's marriage to King Charles, he had been brought close enough to feel the warmth of the crown's glow. Over the years, he was invited to gatherings, posed in group photos, and smiled alongside the royal children. But there was always an invisible line, one that had now been drawn more boldly than ever before. William's decision was not about hierarchy. It wasn't about royal titles or who belonged by name. It was about trust, respect, and protecting the environment his children were growing up in. For him, George's tears had revealed something far deeper than teasing. They showed how quickly access to royalty could be misused, even by those considered part of the extended family. Camilla felt that line as a rejection. To her, the separation of her grandson from future royal events wasn't just a disciplinary action. It was a reminder that no matter how close she had come to being fully accepted, her family would always be seen as different. Outside, the debate among royal insiders wasn't just about who was right. It was about what this meant moving forward. How close is too close when you're not born royal? Where does inclusion end and protection begin? In William's eyes, the answer was now clear. His duty to the monarchy would never outweigh his duty to his children. Loyalty redefined. Within the royal family, loyalty has always been a sacred expectation. It is spoken in silence, displayed through gestures, and honored in traditions that stretch back centuries. But Prince William was beginning to redefine what loyalty meant not to the crown, but to his own blood. The system may have raised him, but his loyalty now belonged first and foremost to his wife and children. And in that quiet yet powerful shift, a new message was taking root across the palace. William's actions weren't driven by protocol, but by something far more human: love and protection. For too long, royal duty had asked members of the family to stay silent, to tolerate hurt in the name of appearance. William was now showing that those days were over. If something threatened the peace of his family, he would act even if it meant offending a queen, upsetting a king, or breaking tradition. To some within the palace, it was a bold and admirable move. To others, it was a dangerous and emotional decision that could ripple through the monarchy's structure. Camilla, still wounded, saw it as a break in the fragile trust she had built over the years. And Charles, silently watching his son take a firmer stance than he ever had, began to question what kind of monarchy would exist when William took the throne. Loyalty, once measured by silence and obedience, was now being reshaped by courage, boundaries, and the quiet roar of a protective father who would not let history repeat itself. The crown, the child, and the quiet legacy. In a monarchy built on tradition, it was an unexpected act of quiet rebellion that left the deepest mark. Prince William's decision to protect his son, not with press statements or dramatic gestures, but with firm, silent action, became a turning point not just within the royal household, but in the way duty itself was defined. The choice to exclude Camilla's grandson might have seemed small to outsiders, but inside the palace, it shook foundations that had stood unquestioned for generations. William had chosen his son over politics, his child's peace over palace harmony. In doing so, he rewrote the unwritten rules of royal loyalty. For centuries, the crown demanded sacrifice, emotions buried, grievances silenced. But William, molded by history and scarred by the past, chose a different path. One that placed love above legacy, family above formalities. Camilla, feeling the sting of exclusion, stepped back, less visible, less trusting. King Charles, deeply aware of the rift, remained silent, torn between his role as monarch and his duty as husband and father. The royal family would carry on, as it always does. But beneath the gold-trimmed appearances, the dynamic had changed forever. And as young Prince George moved forward, unaware of the battle fought in his name, he did so under the protection of a father who dared to challenge the very system he was born to inherit. No public speeches, no headlines. Just a father, a future king, and a quiet legacy that will echo long after the crown changes hands. In the stillness of the palace, one decision echoed louder than centuries of tradition. Prince William didn't choose the crown that day, he chose his son. In that quiet moment, he rewrote the meaning of loyalty, trading silence for protection and duty for love. There were no public announcements, no dramatic scenes, but everything had changed. And beneath the weight of history, a new kind of monarchy was born, one where the heart, not the throne, holds the greatest power.